family. I go by Kofi Paisai, and I'm gonna do some reading and sharing today. I'm gonna try to keep this up. I'm gonna try to keep reading and sharing information. Today we're gonna talk about the rise and the fall of Black Wall Street. I was having a conversation the other day, and it's not a shock or surprise that a lot of us don't know about Black Wall Street. So the conversation I had the other day sparked me to talk about Black Wall Street today, known as Little Africa. I'm gonna be reading from the Rise and Fall of Black Wall Street: The Seven Keys of Empowering Principles by Robert Walker today. I'm gonna start on page 8, and I'm gonna read on down so you can see what black folks was doing 40 years, maybe 50 years after slavery. We first, after the Emancipation Proclamation, was supposed to be getting Hotep Senatiba. But after the Emancipation Proclamation, the General Sherman passed down what was it called? The Special Field Order number 15, which was after Emancipation Proclamation. A lot of people that was freed, our ancestors that was freed, wanted their own economic independence. They wanted to be away from the European after slavery. So they was promised 40 acres in the mule. They was actually promised 40,000 acres of land from, I think, North Carolina to Georgia. This was in January or something that they passed, where they were supposed to have been giving the slaves 40,000 acres of land from, I think, North Carolina to Georgia. But after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln's death, they after his death, Andrew Johnson took over, and during the summertime, he stopped the Special Field Order number 15 from going through. So 40 years after, maybe 40 years, 50 years, don't take me on that, but I think it's 40, 50 years, not too long after that, 40, 50 years, that these people went into Tulsa, Oklahoma, and created a great economic power. So I just want to read about Little Africa, is it called, or Black Wall Street, as it called. This is also where Wall Street get its name from. So I'm gonna start off on page 8. We're gonna read down, and I'll stop and discuss a few things later on. The early history. The Creek Indians founded Tallahassee sometime after 1834. The first blacks there were their slaves. Now, this may catch people's eyes because a lot of people don't know about this. A lot of people don't know also that, and I'll keep reading in a minute, don't know that the Indians enslaved some of our ancestors too. That's crazy to me too. Why would you enslave another group of people when you already catching hell from the European down here, snatching your land, genociding your different tribes, or pushing you off in other different areas? But yes, the Indians enslaved some of us, the Choctaws, the Chickasaws, the Creeks, and the Cherokee. I think the Cherokee was also one of them. Some of the information you can look at, Black Master, one book, Black Master, Black Slave, Black Master, is one book. You can get some of this information out of. Another book is Black Slave Free Town is another book where you get information where they kind of go into certain tribes and certain areas enslaving some of our ancestors. But back to this, it may be a surprise to readers to know that some Native American nations also had Africans in bondage. It is, however, likely that enslavement by the Native American was sufficiently different to enslave by Europeans, which is correct. It wasn't at a destructive multitude as the European, or it wasn't for selling and using humans for free labor, and et cetera, et cetera. So it wasn't as extent as the European. After the American Civil War and the emancipation that followed, the black freedmen remained in the area. Freedmen in the Kawati district of the Creek Nation, where Toskla were located, were occasionally chosen for the public position. In the late 19th century, Tallahassee became better known as Tulsi Town. Boosting the black population were an influx of people from Missouri, Mississippi, and Georgia. The black foundings, the Fern AMI Church in 1895 and the Macedonian Baptist Church in 1897. Ralph Ali said that many of the descendants of freed slaves considered it territory of hope and place where they could create their own opportunities. Negroes, it is traditional association with freedom which had entered their folklore. Moreover, Oklahoma lacked a intensive of custom, traditions, and manners which colored and institutions of the Old South, beginning of the Tulsa, Oklahoma miracle. In 1900, the population of Tulsa was an estimated of 1,390. People were blacks made up 5% of the population. Most of the blacks were day laborers, servants, and housewives. However, even at this earlier date, there was a black lawyer. Even at an early date, there were black lawyers, a blacksmith, a stonemason, and a full-time preacher. In 1905, blacks began to buy land in Greenwood Avenue. This road evolved into a century of Black Wall Street. A year later, the black newspaper was established called the Tulsa Guide, edited by certain G.W. Hutchinson. However, in 1907, Oklahoma official became an American state, and the white power structure immediately enforced a series of laws to turn Oklahoma into a white domain state. They aimed to depower the blacks and the Indians. That's not a surprise. The key issue seems to be control over the oil booming across Oklahoma. The white power structure did not want this oil boom being controlled by blacks and Native Americans. Now, there's going to be a whole thing, too. A lot of people don't know about that, about the oil that was being in Oklahoma and the population at that time. You had Native Americans and black in this area, and then how the whites ended up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, because of the oil. So they didn't want the Native American or the blacks at that time, the freedmen, to capitalize off of this oil. So they moved into this area at this time in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Early as 1907, however, black Tulsa by now had 2 doctors and a barber and 3 grocery stores. The importance of the oil industry cannot be emphasized enough. By 1907, Oklahoma was a leading state in the United States in terms of oil production. At one time, the booming town of Tulsa itself contained offices for 126 oil companies. By 1913, Oklahoma produced a quarter of all the oil in the United States. Production in 1915 reached 300,000 barrels of oil at a daily basis. By 1910, Tulsa grew to a population of 18,182 people within black, comprising 10%. 10% of the population. This same year saw the birth of the first black traded union, the Hod Carriers Local Number 199, designed to protect the interior of bricklayers, plasters, and masons. In 1911, Marlon Cleaver became the first black police officer in Tulsa, Oklahoma. In and it is instructive to find out why so many blacks became to Tulsa during these earlier years. Mabel Little was 17 years old who arrived at Tulsa in 1913 from Bollie, Oklahoma. Her opinion of the district were the following: black business flourishing. I remember Huff Cabs on Cincinnati in Archer. It was thriving meeting place in the black community. You could go there almost any time and just about every day. Who was anybody who would be there or on their way. There were also two peculiar barber spots, Tipton's and Uncle Steve. J.D. Main, a grocery store. His wife was a music teacher. We had two funeral parlors owned by mortician Sam Jackson, Harold Richardson. Down on what went by the name of Deep Greenwood was clique of eaters. Paranoid of lively dance halls, barber shops, and theaters, glitters, and nightlight, a number of medical dental office. So you can see right there that the black folks that bought Greenwood Avenue at that time started to thirst and started to fly. They started building financial wealth. They started being entrepreneurs. They started building things and started circulating the dollar. And this was a girl that they actually talked to that was came to Tulsa, Oklahoma at that time, and she was naming some of the things that she had seen some of the black businesses in the black community in Tulsa, Oklahoma at this time. I'm gonna name a whole bunch of stuff that they had when we get down to it. By 1913, a part of Greenwood Avenue was now being called Deep Greenwood. It was also called the Negro Wall Street. The white community began calling it Little Africa. An organizer of the National Negro Business League, the organization founded by the great Booker T. Washington, called it a regular Monte Carlo. There was another black newspaper at this time called Weekly Planet. Professor J.H. Hill edited this newspaper. Many parents left Rochester, New York to come to Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1918. Eventually, she ran a typewriter school in the Wood Building. She gave her reasons for coming to Tulsa, Oklahoma as follows. I had heard of this town since a girlhood and of many opportunities here to make money. But I came not to Tulsa as many came, lured by the dreams of making money and bettering myself in a financial world, but because of the wonderful cooperation I observed among our people, and especially the harmony of the spirit and action that exists between the businesses and women. On Greenwood, one could find a variety of business places which would be credited to any section of the town. In residential section, there were homes of beautiful and splendor which would please most critical eyes. The schools of many churches were well attended. Professor Alfred Brophy, author of Reconstruction of the Dreamland, believed he had detected other reasons for why blacks came to Tulsa. Greenwood residents spoke about the needed to prevent lynching, to protecting voting rights, to develop the community. Central to their thinking was the ideal and the rules of laws, that the governor should establish impartial rules and apply them equally to whites and blacks. Blacks even if segregated should receive the same treatment as whites on railroads. Black schools should equal in funding qualities of white schools. Blacks should be allowed to register to vote, to serve as a jury on the same terms as white. Policy officers should treat blacks with same respect they according whites. Those ideals about laws were promulgated in a page of the black newspaper. Sometimes they appeared in more formal arenas like federal courts, where blacks filed suit to protect their rights to equal treatment. They won 2 cases in the United States Supreme Court in 1910. One struck down Oklahoma grandfather's clause. The other Oklahoma railroads segregated statutes which allow railroads to provide unequal treatments to black. But Tulsa began flourishing. According to local historians, Henry Whitlow, white racism was a major impetus for growth in the business district. Blacks could work in the white areas of a common labor, domestic, and in service sectors, but their money was not welcomed by the white businesses. So you can still see at the same time too, this was not too long, 40 years maybe after slavery, you still had segregation that was going on. They was appealing certain things to the court, trying to get equal rights as white at this time. They got awarded a few things, but a lot of things got shut down at that point of time. But these certain people that was in Tulsa, Oklahoma with the natives at this time, that was called Tulsa, Oklahoma by the Tallahassee Native Americans, they created their own. You can see that they didn't wait on that. They didn't wait on going to work in white areas as laborers and domestic service. They created their own economic power at this time, and they was treated fairly by their own people because we circulated our own dollars and we hired our own people at this time. And you will see, and I'm gonna keep reading, and you will see how successful that a lot of us, a lot of black people became, how a lot of success in this area in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm going to read. You're going to see how a lot of people that was in the area was not poor at this time, 40 years after slavery. But their money was not welcomed by the white business. In fact, segregation in Tulsa was more complete than any other American city. Consequently, the black community had to create their own business in order to be able to spend their own money. And sometimes I suggest that we go back to that same thing because we had the biggest spending power in the war, $87 billion. We are the biggest consumers in the world. And if we stayed if at one point, I talked about this the last time about segregation, and I talked about Martin Luther King also doing it in an interview, said that because we know during the civil rights they fought for integration. We know about Brown versus the Board of Education, where they was trying to stop segregation. But then at 1954, we know segregation took place at that time, but we knew Martin Luther King said that he has feared that he is integrating his people into a burning house. He knew that segregation would be the worst thing for us integration would be the worst thing for us, integration, because we had our own. We gave up everything to integrate with those that hated us, that did not look like us. So we had more stuff. We owned more stuff because we had no choice but to deal with our own self at this time because of segregation. And through integration, we gave up what we had to integrate with those that did not like us and did not like us at this time and still do not like us. This is why at this time we don't own a damn thing anymore. We don't own land. We don't own business. We had 0.8% of black people being rich in this country. But that's a whole nother story. According to other writers, another impetus that moved Greenwood forward was presence of the black veterans returning to Tulsa after the ending of the World War II in 1918. These veterans was asked to fight to defend U.S. freedom abroad, and these ideals must have permitted through black Tulsa societies of their return. These men believed that they had earned full citizenship, partnership, and acceptance. As an example of this, Professor DeBrofree cited a 1918 speech given by Roscoe Dungy, editor of Oklahoma City black newspaper, The Black Dispatch, where he said President Wilson said, "We go out to make the world safe for democracy. Democracy means that black men as well as white men shall sit in jury boxes and everywhere democratically means. If we would breathe the pure air in which Wilson speaks, the spoliation of exploitation of black men property shall cease. It means that segregation, Jim Crowism, and mob violence must die, and that it must steed there must rise justice, equality, and fairness. By 1921, the black population now numbered 11,000 people out of the total of 98,874 that had a black public library. They had 2 black schools, the Paul Laurence Dunbar and the Booker T. Washington. 3/4 of black children of schools agreed were now in school. Tuskegee had a section lowest black illiteracy rate in any country in Oklahoma. There were 2 black newspapers, Tuskegee Star, the Oklahoma Sun. Now what I'm doing, I'm naming all the stuff that Tuskegee, Oklahoma had at this time. 40 years, 50 years after slavery, things that we had acquired, that we got on our own after slavery. We did all these things on our own, all these great accolades, all these accomplishments, all of this wealth we had 40, 50 years after slavery during the segregation time. So they talk about the 2 different schools, you know, the schools that we had. Right here where it talks about the public, where we had a black public library, but we had two black public schools, the Paul Laurence Dunbar and the Booker T. Washington. And it states that 3/4 of the black children of the school ages were now in school. Oklahoma's second. I was trying to read where it was talking about how they was excelling. I'm not gonna go back through it where the black schools, those 2 black schools, was excelling more than some of the other schools that was in the Oklahoma schools. And I wanted to stop right there because I wanted to talk about how important it is that we start to become, whether you consider yourself African or not, you come from that continent, you come from that continent. So I'm an African centered individual. So a lot of times in those schools there was African centered education, meaning that they taught about black accomplishments. They talked about what blacks contribute to civilization. They taught black excellence. So these are some of the standards that we need to have. That's why I say we need to have our own schools. We need to have our own schools back so we can teach on a African-centered or a black thought, because a lot of what we're being taught, our kids are being taught in school, it's not about black excellence. It's not about blacks excelling. It's not about black superiority. It's about black inferiority. So they teach our babies about European culture, about European greatness, about us being inferior. They teach that black people are inferior and white people are superior. So they are indoctrinating our kids. This is why we are at a lowest rate that we are of kids dropping out of school, because they can't relate to the things that are going on, because they're not teaching about black excellence. They're not teaching about what blacks contribute to this world. And even when you talk about the school system right now, first grade all the way up to the 12th grade, then you go through college where you get your bachelor degree, your masters, and et cetera, et cetera. All these different stages, levels of information, of levels of higher learning. Where do you think that they get this ideal of levels of higher learning from? These are systems. These are African systems that comes from out of Africa. Different levels or different initiatorial systems of higher learning. You're going from one level to the next. In the first grade, you get a certain amount of information. Second grade, you get a certain amount of information. So this is an ideal that comes from us that do not perpetuate into the school system. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, and talk about a little bit about the food system that our kids are actually in now. But you can see, like I stated, they own 2 black schools. So I'm gonna just run down a lot of stuff of what Tulsa, Oklahoma had accomplished 40 years after slavery. So I just talked about the public library, that they had 2 black public schools, the Paul Laurence Dunbar and the Booker T. Washington, and the black public library. They had 2 black newspapers, the Tulsa Star, the Oklahoma Sun. They had 13 churches. One had an attendance of 950 people and a cost of $135,000 to build and furnish. There were black hospitals. There were also three. There were also three fraternal lodges. I'm gonna stop right there too, where it talks about the black hospitals. I was just talking to one of my partners about this too. We had our own everything, and when we talk, I talked about the school, comparing the schools of African centered thought or black thought that we had at that time, and then integrating to their schools. So it's no more black excellence, no more black superiority. It now become black inferiority. So we're being taught to be that we are inferior and white people are superior. So they push their culture no matter what subject matter you go to. Whether you go into math, they're going to tell you about Pythagoras. They're going to tell you about Euclid when you're dealing with math. They're going to tell you about Aristotle. They're going to when you're dealing with certain types of literature and philosophy and certain things like that. They're going to tell you about hypocrisy, Hippocratic when we're dealing with medicine, certain things that's dealing with the body. These are things. These are not black people, so they're pushing their culture. And then when they talks about us, they talks about slavery. So they talks about inferiority on that standpoint, and pushes their culture to the forefront, which is indoctrinate us that we feel like we come from nothing. You know what I'm saying? They did everything and we didn't do anything. Therefore, we always have to run to them for help. This is what we do. We always say that we gonna run to the white man for help. This is why also too, to teach us to continue to be subservient. This is why we don't own anything anymore. You have more black people working for white people now than it was people that was enslaved during the times of our ancestors brought here from 1619 all the way up to so-called being free in 1865. You had 98% of blacks working for white folks, which we know was what was against our will, free labor. Now we're working, which we're still working for free labor, a subject of slavery, which we're not passing generational wealth down. We're making other individuals rich, and we still don't have a pot to piss in and a window to throw it out of. And it is now you have 99% of black people working for white folks. That's 1% more than it was when we was enslaved working for our unfree will. So I'm just touching on some things that we had that we gave up we gave up to integrate with those. We had a lot of stuff going on at that time, but we gave up a lot of stuff to integrate, and now we don't have a damn thing. So even when I stopped about the black hospitals. Who do you think? And I talked about the schools a while ago. I mean, still talking about the schools, about us teaching about black excellence, black superiority, black contributions, good black images throughout the school systems. And I talked a while ago about the layers of higher information from the first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, till you're going to college. You're getting your associate, your bachelor, your master, your doctorate degree. All these are different levels of school. These are a contribution, I would say, that we gave them. They got this concept of higher learning from different African tribes, different higher levels, different initiatory systems of information. So they got this concept from us, which they don't give us credit for. And even when you're dealing with the hospital, I was talking to one of my partners, and we was talking about births. I was talking about getting a surrogate mother. I can't think of what else they call them at the time that was delivering babies, because at the time when doing segregation, we didn't have their hospitals, institutions to go to give birth or for healing or etc. Which we're not being healed now. Everything is a temporary fix. They taking medicine that they're getting from over there on the continent that they try to demonize us not to go look at our roots back in Africa, but they are extracting the plants from over there and exporting them over here, and synthesizing the herbs that they're getting and making pill forms. It's not a natural healing form. This is why you get a headache and then you'll get a headache again, because it's a temporary fix. You go get on certain types of drugs, you still is attached to these remedies because they're taking the herbs and they're synthesizing it into a pill form and not taking it as a natural herb, etc. But they taking, where do you think that they get birthing? Where did they learn how to birth children from? You know what I'm saying? From the surrogate mothers at this time. Who you think the surrogate mothers at this time? Who do you think took care of the mothers back at in slavery or prior before slavery? You know what I'm saying? Prior before slavery, because we was doing this before slavery. We was great before slavery. We had so many different things going on for us before slavery that they do not teach in the school system. So my partner was telling me that we needed the black hospital. We needed their institution. We needed their white hospital. They got their template from us. You know what I'm saying? Birthing, you know what I'm saying? Doing different things of doses, medicines, where you can go to the Harvard. The Harvard institutions now have certain African papyruses in it that they don't tell you about, that they use these African papyruses that we was doing brain surgery. We was using different techniques for different wounds to heal different type of wounds. We was having heart surgery in ancient times. This ancient times, we was doing these things. They took these things, even when I mentioned Hippocratic. Hippocratic is a Greek. He tell you that he is the son of Imhotep. A lot of us don't even know who Imhotep was. He was a Greek. Imhotep was a genius out of Africa. He was talented in so many different things, but he is considered the father of medicine. But now Hippocratic is considered the father of medicine at this time. So I'm just making a point that we don't need their institutions. And when doing segregation, we didn't have their institutions. We can go back to having our midwives. Appreciate that, Tiba. So we can go back to having our own. But black churches. So we had our own, our black hospitals. So we had our own black hospitals. They had 3 fraternal lodges, i.e., the Masons, the Knights of Pythagoras, and the Independence Orders of the Odd Fellows. The curriculums at the Booker T. Washington School was the following. The youngest pupils, the freshman class, studied Latin, English, algebra, drawing, domestic science, arts, manual training, ancient history, vocal music. The years above, the sophomore classes studied Latin, English, geometry, domestic art, drawing, medieval and modern history, economics, music, domestic science, manual training. The junior class studied English, algebra, commercial, arithmetic, drawing, manual training, business, spelling, chemistry, English history, civics, domestic arts, domestic science, and vocal music. Final, the senior class studied English, physics, geometry, solid typewriting, vocal music, domestic science, manual training, American history, psychology, trigonometry, playing, bookkeeping, drawing, domestic arts, and shorthands. In addition, all classes were required to take part in some forms of athletics. So you can see at this time that we had our own higher education at this form of time. So I don't understand why we will push the courts to integrate into their school systems at this time when we had our own higher learning. You know, it says that we were studying Latin, English, algebra, drawing, domestic science, art. Man, this was in the schools that we had, and it broke down all these different things. So I don't see at that point in time why some of our ancestors would say, even though I can see that they say, but we had teachers because something happened after Tulsa, Oklahoma. But Tulsa, Oklahoma was one of the only thriving things at this time, and I may come back and talk about some other places after Tulsa, Oklahoma, and a place that I found actually before Tulsa, Oklahoma, that was down here in the South. Actually, that was down here where close, only 40 minutes away from where I am, which is Natchez, Mississippi, a place, that I may talk about, which I will talk about soon, that actually was before Tulsa, Oklahoma, actually during the time of slavery that a lot of people don't talk about before the Emancipation Proclamation was passed, and certain individuals traveling to Oakland at this point in time and passed down some of the things that they had that developed into the Black Panther Party. And also the template of Tulsa, Oklahoma. But we know more about Tulsa, Oklahoma, because Tulsa, Oklahoma did have more than what the people in Natchez had. But Natchez was also a free town during slavery a free town during slavery at that time, and you had black people that did thrive and have certain things at that time, not at a magnitude at Tulsa, Oklahoma did during the early during the early 1900s. Black Tulsa, Oklahoma also had one shop selling feed and grain, one undertaking with casket ranging from $50 to $1,000 with 10,000 lumicides to transport the bereaved family members, 2 garages, field stations, 6 estate agent loan companies, insurance companies, 5 building/contractor, 2 dressmakers, 4 shoemakers/repair with up-to-date machinery, 10 tailors, 1 printer with 25,000 worth of equipment, 12 barbers, 3 hairdressers, a beauty salon, 5 cleaners, hatters and dryers, a number of plumbers, 1 upholstery, 2 photographers, 1 jeweler, and 15 physician, dentists, and surgery. So you can see right here too, we also had our own. I mean, we had everything. We had our own everything. And what the beauty part about this, well, we had our own schools, we had our own library, we had our own restaurants, we had our own printing shops, we had our own barbers, we had our own institution of religion, we had our own tailors, we had our own photographs, we had our own upholstery company, we had our own lawyers, we had our own hospitals, we had a number of plumbers, we had our own everything. And the beautiful thing about this was we were relying on our own. We supported our own. We circulated the dollar in our community, because now we know that the dollar does not circulate in the black community. It doesn't even make a circle. Circulation is making a circle. So when you do the statistics on each way, you do the statistics on the Jewish nation that's over here, you do the statistics on the European that's over here, you do the statistics on the Asian that's over here, the Japanese are over here, you can see how their dollar is circulating in their community. They're supporting their own people. So their dollar is circulating in their own community. But our dollar does not circulate. And I forgot the statistics on all those different people that's ethnic groups of people that's here that support their own people, and their dollar circulate in their own community. But I know in our community, a dollar does not even make a full does not make a full circle in our community. Time we get our money is spent and making other people riches. We do not spend money in our own neighborhood with the little black businesses that we have, which is very small. So we take our money, time we get paid, and we go take it and circulate it in the other community and continue to build wealth for other people other than ourselves. It must be emphasized that many of these medical practitioners had invested heavily up-to-date apparel equipment. Greenwood Avenue was the Negro Wall Street, as also was a portion of Orchard Street. These areas had 2 or 3 stories buildings, including dry goods stores. Black Tulsa had 2 in total, groceries and meat markets. Black Tulsa, Oklahoma had 41 total confectionaries. Tulsa, Oklahoma had 4 in total restaurants. Black Tulsa, Oklahoma had 30 in total billiard halls. Black Tulsa, Oklahoma had 9 in total. 11 boarded houses, i.e. rented accommodations. 4 hotels. We had 4 hotels as well. 40 years after slavery. Black Tulsa, Oklahoma had 5 in total. 2 black theaters. We had our own black theaters, of which one, according to one source, had 700 seats. In addition, there was doctors, lawyers, and professionals, like I talked about a while ago. On the side streets were the illegal and semi-legal business. There were a chop joint, i.e. drinking house, selling Choctaw beer and drinking, supposedly associated with the Choctaws, in the Native American nations. Also, there were nightclubs, brothel, gambling parlors, and speakers. Like I talked about earlier, doing when I first started, I talked about the Tallahassees or different Native Americans that was in this area that we call Tulsa, Oklahoma, that actually enslaved some of our ancestors, which was the Choctaws, the Chickasaws, the Cherokees, the Creeks, which was in Georgia, and etc. And then after that, you had the freedmen at that time. So at that time, you had the Native American and the blacks that had that area at that time. So they made a drink after the one of the native, I guess one of the native tribes in here, Choctaw beer in their nightclubs and their brothels and their gambling parlors. There was institutions selling illicit whiskey. People also had access to opium. There were, you know, and I'm again, it says there were gangsters and there were gangsters and hoodlums. Of course, you're gonna have people bring in bad elements at this time, and I'm not the type of person to romanticize anything about romanticize anything dealing that we was all in kumbaya. You have people that romanticize our people, our culture, and the continent that we come from, that there was always kumbaya. There was no type of riffraff in our community. We all got along, which that wasn't true. Also, some of the poor blacks lived in the side streets, shanties. Interestingly, many other poor blacks lived in white areas in quarters located on the employer lot. And the total one source states that 600 businesses flourished in Black Tulsa, legal and illegal. Black Tulsa came alive from Thursday evening through the weekend as blacks from the white areas came to Black Tulsa home to party. Jazz was the music that accompanied Tulsa nightlife. There were individuals examples that illustrated the concept of living fat. At least 3 blacks had fortunes, listen to this, of $1 million each. One source goes further to claim 6 blacks had a large fortune, some with private planes. Several blacks had fortunes of $25,000 to $500,000. It must be remembered, right, that $25,000 back then dwarfs $25,000 today, because we're not talking about 2007. We're talking about in the early 1900s. We're talking about the 20th century, not the 21st century. So during that time, $1 million, I mean, was I guess damn near big in there. You know, I'm just guessing, you know, but I know it was $1 million was more than what it is today. $25,000 was more than what it was today. $500,000. It must remember that it became fashionable and to dangle $20 gold pieces, watches, and chains. One black shoe shiner, Joe Hinton, repuddled on 3 such gold pieces. Simon Berry operated the bus, taxis, garage service that was turned over 500 per day. So also we had our own buses, we own our own tax, we had our own garage service at this time, and it said that they was turning over $500 per day. That's great, man. He owned his own plane. He also owned a Royal Hotel in Greenwood District. By the mid-1920s, Berry and another black business, James Lee Norton, operated and populated airline charters service in Tulsa. So you can see right there, man, that like I said, 40, 50 years after us being so-called free during the segregation area, that we had a lot of stuff that was going on, you know, and it stated that we had, you know, like I said, it stated that we had our own everything. So we didn't have to depend on nobody else. And that's why I say at the time segregation was the best thing, you know what I'm saying, smoking for us, you know what I'm saying? And we can see today in 2017 that we don't own near about none of these things that Little Africa or Tulsa, Oklahoma had at this time 40 and 50 years after slavery. But, and we can get, or we can acquire all these things again, but we have to learn how to support one another. We have to learn how to become entrepreneurs, you know what I'm saying, and stop trying to always talk about going and get a good job. You know what I'm saying? A good job is actually working for yourself. Your good is employing your own people. Good job is actually passing generational wealth down to your family. When you leave here, your family has something to look forward to. No one else to depend on. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, no one else to depend on. So we had all these things going on, and we can get these things again. And maybe in the next thing, next time I'll share with the reading and writing. I'll pull another book off the shelf, and we'll go into some other places after Tulsa, Oklahoma. You know what I'm saying? That had things prior to some years after slavery, during the segregation period, and during the Jim Crow area. But something that happened during Tulsa, Oklahoma. I talked about all the great things that they had during Tulsa, Oklahoma, but Tulsa, Oklahoma was assassinated. I don't even know how long I've been on here. Atiba, if you on here, man, still on here, man, how long I've been on here? Because I want to talk about also the great things that I talked about, the great things that happened, but I also want to talk about how Tulsa, Oklahoma was destroyed, and how some of these other places was destroyed also. You know what I'm saying? Us relying on our own, and them coming in and destroying what we had. And even I say the same thing, though. I say we need to support ourselves. We all need to push our kids and push ourselves, and encourage ourselves to be entrepreneurs and stop working for people where we're able to pass generational wealth down. Okay, 47 minutes. All right. Appreciate that, Santone. Where we're able to pass generational wealth down to each other. But again, with what we have to. I also understand what we're dealing with. Also, what we understand what we're dealing with over here in the wilderness of North America that we call the United States of America. I understand what the people are dealing with over there in South America. I understand what people are dealing with over there in the Caribbean. I understand what people are dealing with over there in the motherland, which is Africa. So I understand what they're dealing with. They're dealing with one group of people wanting to always be on top. So they'll do whatever it takes for them to be on top. So they'll murder, they'll pillage, they'll rape, they'll destroy, they'll divide, they'll indoctrinate, they'll do whatever they have to do. And I understand that if we build ourselves back up like Tulsa, Oklahoma did, and create this big economic stream for us, where we're able to pass down generational wealth to each other. We don't have a military, and this is one thing that they have. They have a military, but they have also convinced our own people to participate in their military, to participate in murdering, pillaging, in order for those that are in power to stay in power and to continue to have wealth and continue to pass generational wealth down to their family, which is insane to me. Hold on one second. My thoughts are, what would have prevented the disruption of Black Wall Street? Also, can we prevent the same from happening if we choose to go identical route? No need to respond here. Well, yeah, that actually is Atiba. What you're talking about right there, I'm actually explaining that. My fear is that we can actually do the same thing, but my fear is that, again, that the same thing will happen. Because, I mean, if you go study other places that build generational wealth and had businesses, and we had our own everything, they always came in and destroyed it. And they destroyed things. There's one, one, black people, we don't have a warring spirit. We don't have a warring spirit for it as destruction. And we don't own any military. And we don't own a military. We don't have a big military. They have one of the biggest militaries in the world. And again, they have encouraged our own people to participate in their military so they can continue to raise havoc in other countries and rape the resources from other countries so those that are in power can stay in power. So I think we will have to build our own military, which will probably be hard to build because, again, doing us integrating and not staying on our own, we don't own a damn thing. So having a military comes with it. Not only training, but you have to have the weapons. You know what I'm saying? We can't because that's one thing that was happened with us when the Europeans came into West Africa. They came into West Africa with new technology. They came into Africa with guns. They came in with the cannons. The gunpowder that they got from the Japanese, that I say was karma from the Japanese at the time doing during World War II. The Japanese Americans that was over here at the time, they doing the World War II, they took every Japanese American and snatched them up and put them in concentration camps. And I was just saying, that's just my own personal opinion, that was just karma from them giving the European this thing called gunpowder. But that was one reason why when they came in, they defeated us because of the technology, the cannons, the guns, the gunpowder. We was no match for that type of technology. The technology at that time that we had was knives, guns, spears, the bow, the arrow, the hatchet, and etc. And that was no match for the new technology. This was one of the reasons why they took conquered our ancestors at that point of time. So I don't know what it would take for us to. I know what we could do to obtain, detain all the greatness that we once had. Dealing with Tulsa, Oklahoma, and other places outside where we own our everything and our dollars circulating in our community, and we had more wealthy people than we had, which is a shame. We had more wealthy people 40 years after slavery than we do when we are so-called free. We have rich people today, but I mean, I can't remember the statistic, but I think it's like 0.8, 0 point something percent of black people that are rich in rich in the United States. We had more people that was rich during the time of segregation. But I think the same thing will be repeated because I think they will come in and do the same thing to us. We can build up and build our own schools again. We can build our own hospitals. We can have our own taxis, our own restaurants, our own farms, our own drugstores, our own lawyers, our own doctors. We can facilitate our own. But I think they'll come in again and destroy it again because United States is the only place that bombed its own country. And they bombed Tulsa, Oklahoma. I talked about all the great things in this book, but I wanted to talk about what happened after these people thrived and had all of these things that I named that Tulsa, Oklahoma had. These people came in and burnt damn near everything down. Had the military to come in, some of the same tactics that they're still using today. The same tactics, bringing the military in to our communities, you know what I'm saying, and attacking us. So those tactics they're still using today, but they had the military to come in mostly, but the military came in mostly after the whites from across the tracks that came into Tulsa, Oklahoma actually burnt down everything, and then the military came in and then bombed it from the top. That's crazy. You had your own military come in and bomb the black community. But this is nothing new. If you look at Nagasaki and Hiroshima, you can see that the United States that we so proud of, we went in and we bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. and bombed and killed innocent people at that time. So it's no surprise for them coming in and bombing under the circumstances, build with defenses at the forefront. Yes, excuse me. Yeah, we could do that. Um, um, damn, I forgot what I was saying. Um, but yeah, but again, I mean, we still don't have. I think the same thing would happen if we did the same thing. I mean, I could be mistaken. There could be other things that we probably could do, but again, like I say right now, we don't own anything. So I mean, we still are purchasing things from them. I mean, we could train, but again, the technology, they have more technology than what we have. Um, um, but I won't even read the rest of it, like I said, because it's been almost an hour being on here, and I only wanted to be on here an hour and just read about Tulsa, Oklahoma, and all the things that Tulsa, Oklahoma had at that point, and how Tulsa, Oklahoma got established 40 years, and what we had, all the great things that we had after slavery, and what we gave up to segregate. Even though Tulsa, Oklahoma was attacked and uh, burnt to burnt to the ground. So I just give a brief a brief thing of one of the reasons they was already jealous about the people across the tracks that these blacks bought up this Greenwood Avenue, this long avenue, and had all these thriving businesses at these times, and did not, which you did across the tracks. You did have some blacks that lived across the tracks that went in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that actually worked in the white establishment and got paid a poor wages. But across the tracks, you had you had Little Africa, you had Tulsa, Oklahoma, where we employed our own. More was under 57 minutes. Okay, appreciate it. Um, um, you had more entrepreneurs. You had more rich people, rich black people, more wealthy black people, great homes, great establishments, etc. But one of the things that assault on Tulsa, Oklahoma was one individual was on an elevator with a European woman, and she said that the black guy actually touched her, and uh, it caused a big ruckus for them to actually come across the tracks to look for the guy. We also had our own police department. We policed our own people. So when we understood policing our own people, we didn't need outside people to police us, because we know when we talk about police, we know police comes from the slave patrol, and we know what the slave, but that was the police, police descended from the slave patrol, but we wanted to police our own people, so we had our own police teams, and at that time, if I'm not mistaken, I think he escaped, and um, our police force hold him and tried to protect him. And then a newspaper got out, a clipping got out of a black man from that side attacked a white woman. And this would cause the ruckus of them coming across the tracks, uh, where they rally up where a lot of Europeans rally up and went across the tracks. And through us trying to protect him, a ruckus fell out, and some people got killed and hurt on our side, and some people got hurt and killed on their side. And then they started to robbing and looting. You know, they always say black people are always the ones robbing. You know, when we have a protest, you know, we are always robbing and looting our own. You know, we are they push this propaganda, but you can see that the European was also robbing and looting. I mean, you can see it today. They still having protests where they're robbing and robbing and shooting today. You know, if you look at some of these incidents where these neo-Nazis protesters are popping up all over the world, you can see they doing the very same thing, but they don't get the same light from the a news outlet or the media's outlet as we do. But they started robbing, looting, and started burning things down, and they were still trying to protect this individual that was accused of actually touching the woman, which later on they found out that he didn't even touch this white woman in the elevator. So that was started, and I think this stuff lasted for almost a week, and the governor brung in the military, and the military came in uh, after they lynched and murdered a lot of people in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and burnt down a lot of businesses, looted a lot of businesses, burnt down a lot of nice homes at the time, and the military came in by air and destroyed the rest of it. I wish I could have read the rest of it. Just went in full detail, but I'm just giving a brief summary of what happened during that time, or how Tulsa, Oklahoma was destroyed. They was already wanting the reason to come across the tracks to do something anyway because of what was going on in Tulsa, Oklahoma at the masses. And I just wanted to share some of the information about Black Wall Street, of the conversation that we had, or that I had with a few people that don't even know about Tulsa, Oklahoma, or what we had 40 or 50 years after slavery. And we can have, like I said, we can have those things again, but just in fear of yeah, it was bad. Yeah, Brother Ryan, it was bad. Because I'm just giving a brief summary, but I just didn't go in. If I'd have read, the book goes in full detail of everything that happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Even after Tulsa, Oklahoma, they was able to rebuild, but wasn't able to build it back at the magnitude that they had it in the beginning. In the beginning. So again, this is Rise and Fall of Black Wall Street, The 7 Keys Empowering Principles by Robert Walker. It's a good book. Like I said, it goes into detail of how it got started. It goes into this book. I read this book maybe I don't know, a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and I like learning, and I didn't even know that it talks. I knew about Tulsa, Oklahoma, but I didn't know as far as the extent of what all Tulsa, Oklahoma own. I didn't know that they. I knew they had a school, but I know they didn't have 2 schools. I didn't know that they had their own black library. I didn't know that they had their own restaurants. I didn't know that they had their own hotels. I didn't know that they had that certain people owned planes at this time. I didn't know that they had multiple barbershop, tailors. I didn't know a lot of these things. No doubt, Senator Tebow. So again, this is a great book, but it also put me on the research of the Native Americans that was over here, because prior to 3 years ago, I didn't know. I didn't know that the natives. Okay, I'll type it in when I get off here, and you can go on here and get the name off of here, man. The book is not even that expensive, San Antonio, but I'll type it in there so you can get it. And Robert Walker, man, is a great author. I have a few his books as well, that a lot of people are familiar with. But I didn't know with this book, it took me on a thing of the natives. I didn't know at that time that the Native Americans, enslaved some of our ancestors at a point of time. So it took me on a thing, and I also, for those that want to know about, some of the stuff I read about the Tallahassee during that time, or certain tribes that actually enslaved some of the ancestors I gave. One of the books was Black Slave, Indian Master, Black Slavery, Free Town. Those are 2 good books that goes into detail about the Choctaws, the Chickasaws, the Creek, the Cherokee, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think um, Black Slave Freetown, it goes into some stories of some of the ex-slaves escaping during slavery and going into some of the Native Americans' areas, and the natives enslaving them by that time. But we know later on, through times, that they hid us from the so-called slave masters, and us mixing, uh, with the Native American by them enslaving us, or them hiding us uh, later on in time, from us escaping uh, off the plantation. So those are two books that you can get if you want to find some information on a Native American owning enslaving people over here, which is kind of crazy to me. But again, it wasn't as on a multitude as the European, as raping, kidnapping, sodomizing us, slaving us, murdering our mothers, um, selling us off, working us for free labor, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a good book if you want to learn and go in depth about Black Tulsa, Oklahoma. And there's other books out there that's dealing with Black Tulsa, Oklahoma. So do your own information. Now you know some of the things that we had prior, not too long after slavery. Also, I talked about look up Special Field Order number 15. Them premises, 40 acres in the land. We were supposed to be getting 40,000 acres of land from North Carolina to Georgia, after after the Emancipation Proclamation in 1865, or it might have been in 1866 when they promised us that by the General Sherman, and then the president that took over after Abraham Lincoln assassinated the president, Andrew Johnson, who denied it, but we wouldn't get it. But we didn't let that stop us. We went on and went off. You know, some of us went off, some of us didn't. Some of us went back to the plantation, which I talked about sharecropping in the last thing. But just look up some of those things. The Field Order number 15. Also, go back and look at the video I had. Also, after I've talked about after slavery, but I forgot to talk about the Special Field Order number 15. But I talk about the special housing project. Special housing projects, the Homestead Act, the other Homestead Act, the forming the form administration, I think the FHA, how the projects came about, redlining, reverse redlining. So go check that video out there and do your own research also on that. Again, I'm gonna try to do this
and the stigma
at least
stops people from getting the help that they need.
I'm gonna try to come on here and read and share some things at least twice a week, reading and sharing some books, sharing some books, reading some stuff out there, books. And y'all just let me know also what y'all would like for me to read, because I got just about any kind of subject or topic on anything on my bookshelf. But appreciate for those that were tuning in. See y'all next time. Peace.